Good day, learners. Welcome back to class. Welcome to Biology with Omotayo. Previously, we have examined Introduction to Biology. Under that very topic, we looked at biology as a science. We also examined scientific method, after which we looked at characteristics of living things 1, and then characteristics of living things 2. Just a quick recap. In the course of that study, we came across a couple of terminologies. One of such was science, which we define as a systematic process of making inquiry about living and non-living things. We equally define the word biology, which originated from two Greek words, bios and logos, meaning life and study. We equally had words such as eukaryotic, meaning true nucleus, prokaryotic, meaning false nucleus, not well formed, not a true nucleus. We equally came across the word Krebs cycle. Yes, a cycle that is observed in the mitochondria of cell during the second phase of aerobic respiration. We equally came across the word glycolysis, breakdown of glucose molecule into 2 mole of pyruvic acid. Glycolysis do take place in the cytoplasm. These are few of a couple of terms and concepts that were examined in the course of our study last episode that dealt with Introduction to Biology. Today, we have a new topic before us. We'll be delving into the topic classification of living things. Taxonomy of living things. Yes, classification of living things. And under this topic, we'll be having a couple of subtopics as well. We'll be starting with the introduction to classification of living things, after which we'll be having the binomial nomenclature, and then classification and evolution. 3 subtopics. However, the third one, that is classification and evolution, had a lot of other subdivisions. So come journey with me as we'll be going into the first subtopic under the topic classification of living things. The first subtopic is introduction to classification of living things. Introduction. So, under introduction to the classification of living things, we'll start by defining a couple of terms as well. To start with, we have the term classification. Classification simply means the grouping, the arrangement of organisms with similar characters based on structural, genetic, cellular, evolutionary trend, and so on for easy identification. I say it again. Classification of living things simply means the grouping of living things, the arrangement of living things with similar characters based on their structures, genetic similarities, cellular similarities, evolutionary trend, such that it makes them easier for identification. So, grouping of living things, making use of a couple of concepts they share that are similar. Okay? And so, there is no how classification can be well examined without looking at 2 concepts that comes up under classification. One of these 2 is the word taxonomy. Taxonomy. And the second is systematic. The word taxonomy simply means the naming of living things. It is the science of naming. Okay? Can also be said to be the science of nomenclature. That is taxonomy. Has to do with what? Nomenclature. And the next, systematic, simply has to do with the study of evolutionary relationship, okay, among organisms. So this one deals with what? So, in grouping living organisms, in classifying living organisms, you will come to agree with me that naming will have to come to be, and then we will equally be looking at how do we rank them. And if that is to be done, then the evolutionary trend, the relationship must equally be observed such that there can be a progressive study from more complex to least complex, or probably from the least complex progressively to a more complex one. So classification always have to do with these two subs: taxonomy, naming, and systematic evolutionary relationship trend among living organisms. Now, a quick one. Moving on classification, we'll be looking at two systems of classification. The first, which was proposed by a Swiss scientist, that is Linne, okay, Carolus Linnaeus. The first, which was proposed by Linne, Carolus Linnaeus, was the two system of classification. Linne, or otherwise known as Carolus Linnaeus, was a Swiss botanist, and he is equally regarded as the father of taxonomy. He is regarded as the father of classification. He came up with this two system of classification in the 18th century. That was around 1707 to 1778. So he came up with this system of classification, and he classified living things basically into two kingdoms. The first was kingdom plantae, and the second was kingdom animalia. So Linne, or Carolus Linnaeus, as you may choose to call him, classified living organisms using the two system of classification, and all living organisms were classified either as to belong to the kingdom plantae or the kingdom animalia. Okay, just as I earlier mentioned, Linne grouped living organisms into two kingdoms, that is kingdom plantae and kingdom animalia. I know you'll be wondering, how come the word kingdom? Yes, this same botanist came up with a concept of the hierarchical system that enables grouping of living organisms. Yes, a hierarchical system. It has 7 basic groups, and so I'll be listing them now. Okay, so here are they. Carolus Linnaeus came up with the hierarchical system that has 7 groups. This is to enable him to classify living organisms. And the 7 groups are kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. The kingdom contains the largest variety of organisms. So kingdom here, you have largest variety. Okay, and the kingdom is now subdivided into phylum, plural. We use the word phyla, and if you are dealing with the kingdom plantae, rather than the word phylum or phyla, we use division or divisions, as the case may be. Then we have class. Class is subdivided into order, and then order to family, family to genus, and then genus to species. Now, take note, species. At the species level, this is regarded as the smallest and the basic of biological classification. It is the smallest. That is to say, it has the least variety of organisms. And here, individuals have capacity to interbreed and produce fertile offspring. So organisms here have the capacity to what? Interbreed and produce fertile offspring. So a quick run through again: kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Again, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. These groups were adopted by Carl Linnaeus to enable him classify living organisms into either kingdom Plantae or kingdom Animalia. Further on, with the help of this grouping, Carl Linnaeus was equally able to come up with the binomial system of naming, which is known as binomial nomenclature. Carl Linnaeus, having grouped organisms as earlier discussed into kingdoms, subdivided further downward and downward and downward to species, later came up with a concept, and the concept is that living organisms are to be named based on their generic and specific name. What do I mean? That simply means every organism is to be named based on the genus it belongs to and the species it follows. Just like humans as well, we oftentimes at least have two names: your name and your surname. That is, your surname and your first name. In same vein, for living organisms, Carl Linnaeus went on to name them using their generic name, that's from the group genus, and specific name. And so, with a few examples, I will concretize this for our learning. I will quickly draw a table now, and we'll see a couple of organisms, and then with these organisms, we will see how Carl Linnaeus was able to perfect his act of naming. Okay, just as said earlier, Carl Linnaeus used the 7 groups to carry out the classification of various living organisms, and at the end of his breakdown, he came up with a concept of naming each organisms using their genus and species. That is, generic name is given to each organism and a specific name. Now, from the table drawn here, we can see the grouping for human, for dog, and lion. For human, you can see human belongs to the kingdom Animalia as postulated by Carl Linnaeus. The phylum is Chordata, the class is Mammalia, and the order is Primates. The family Hominidae, and the genus Homo. The species Sapien. The same goes for a dog. Dog, always regarded as man's best friend. Since we've looked at man, we look at his best friend. The dog belongs to the same kingdom Animalia, okay, phylum Chordata as well, the class Mammalia, but the order Carnivora, okay, and the family Canidae. The genus is Canis and the species is Familiaris. Okay, a similar thing has been done with regards to lion. Now, with this grouping done, that is to say, together, we can come up with the naming of man. That is to say, if man is to be named now, we will be making use of the generic name, that is the genus, and the specific name, which simply means man will be referred to as Homo sapien, and then the dog will be referred to as Canis familiaris. The lion will be referred to as Panthera leo. Now, in writing these names, we equally have rules. And so, I will be writing out these names and a couple of others, after which I will explain the rule that guided me in writing out the names. Okay, so now we saw the table and we saw how various organisms, at least we saw 3 organisms, were carefully broken into their various kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. Now we want to name them based on their genus and species, that is generic and specific name. So to start with, human is now referred to as the dog, is referred to as, and then the lion is referred to as. I said earlier that we have rules for writing of these names. To write the generic name, which is always the first name, you must start with a capital letter, capital H, capital C, and a capital P. And then the specific name must start with a small letter. Okay, you can see that. And then both names are not to be written jointly, especially when you are writing with the hand, not using a digital tool. Okay, so it's to be written separately, after which the names are underlined as well, separately, not jointly. These rules are to be kept. Please take note. These rules are to be kept. Generic name starts with capital, the specific name with a small letter, spaces in between, and then each name is underlined separately. If you are using a digital tool, you may decide not to underline. You may simply italicize the name. And so, now we are able to name our organism based on the principle of binomial nomenclature, which was invented by Carl Linnaeus. Other organisms that were equally named were, among several, we have like our rice now. Rice is regarded as Oryza sativa. Okay, Oryza sativa. Our pawpaw, the pawpaw, Carica papaya. The house rats, Rattus rattus. Our lizard, Agama agama. The common sweet orange is Citrus sinensis. We have maize as well, simply known as Z-maize, and so on and so forth. So with this now, living organisms can be classified with a 2 naming concept, that is binomial nomenclature, and the rules have been noted. So we will be pausing here for today's class. When we resume next, we will now be looking at the kingdoms of living things in detail. Remember earlier, I said Carl Linnaeus equally grouped living things into 2 kingdoms. That word kingdom was what brought us into the hierarchy for you to know and get to understand where the word kingdom came from. We are yet to really examine the 2 kingdoms he grouped living things into. So by next class, we'll look at the 2 kingdoms Carl Linnaeus grouped living things into. Although that system is no longer in use, a new system is preferred. It is a system of naming organism based on 5 kingdoms. When we meet next class, we will take it from here. Kingdoms of living things. Learners, thank you for coming this far. Please kindly subscribe to this channel, endeavor to like the content as well, and please kindly share. This will enable us to be better encouraged. Don't forget to equally drop your questions at the comments section. Thank you. See you next class. Take care. From the intricate working of the cells to classification of living things, from the mechanism